You aren't leaving. My brother looked me dead in the eye, ripped my passport in half, and dropped it straight into the garbage disposal. As the blades shredded my $7,000 and my freedom into confetti, he smirked and said, "Now you have to stay and watch my kids." I looked at my parents, waiting for them to yell, to stop him, to do something. They didn't. They stood in the doorway and nodded. In that second, I realized this wasn't a family home anymore. It was a cage, and I had to escape. I stood there watching my future get destroyed, while the people who were supposed to love me approved. Before I tell you what I found in my mother's office that changed everything, drop a comment. What is the one thing a family member has done to you that you will never forgive? I slammed my bedroom door and wedged a chair under the handle. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely lock my suitcase. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse on the floor. I grabbed the stack of receipts on my desk, the proof of every late-night freelance web design gig I had worked for 3 years, and threw them into my bag. My name is Morgan. I'm 26 years old, and for my entire adult life, I have been the family ATM. I looked at the spreadsheet pinned to my wall. $7,200. That was the number. That was the Spain fund. It wasn't gift money. It was thousands of websites coded at 2 in the morning, thousands of skipped dinners, thousands of times I said no to my friends so I could say yes to this one dream. And in less than 15 seconds, Cameron had shredded it all away. But as I swept my clothes into the suitcase, the real number flashed in my mind: $17,000. That was the running total of loans I had given Cameron over the years. Emergency rent money, car repairs that never materialized, loans that turned into gifts the moment the check cleared. And then came last week. The memory hit me, sharp and cold. Cameron had cornered me in the den, his eyes gleaming with that predatory entitlement. He didn't ask me to babysit Lily and Noah. He asked for $7,000. He wanted a home gym, equipment he claimed he deserved for being a dedicated father. When I told him that money was for my trip, for my life, his face didn't fall. It hardened. That was the moment I finally understood the math of a narcissist. To Cameron, my savings weren't my property. They were a resource he hadn't claimed yet. And my refusal wasn't just a no, it was a theft. In his twisted ledger, my success was a direct insult to his struggles. He didn't destroy my passport because he needed a babysitter. He destroyed it to balance the equation. If he couldn't have the money, I couldn't have the joy. He needed to bring me back down to zero to make sure the little sister stayed little. I snapped my suitcase shut. They thought this was about a vacation. They thought I was throwing a tantrum over a missed flight. They didn't realize that the ledger was full. I was done paying the Cameron tax. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. I wasn't just leaving for the night. I was closing the account for good. I didn't run. Running makes you look like prey. I walked down the stairs with my bag slung over my shoulder, my boots hitting the hardwood with a steady, rhythmic thud. I could feel their eyes on my back, Cameron, Vanessa, my mother, but I didn't turn around. I had one goal: the front door. I reached for the steel handle, my fingers inches from the cold metal, when a hand slammed against the wood right next to my head. It was my mother. Linda didn't look like the woman who had taught me how to braid my hair or walked me to school. She looked like a security guard at a building I wasn't allowed into. She didn't say a word. She just reached up and slid the chain lock shut. The click echoed through the entryway like a judge's gavel. She turned to face me, crossing her arms over her chest, her frame filling the doorway. She wasn't keeping the peace. She was blocking the exit. "Move," I said. My voice was low, devoid of the tremor I felt in my knees. "You aren't walking out on this family," she growled. "You're going to turn around, go back into that den, and apologize to your brother." I stared at her. He shredded my passport. He destroyed my savings. And you want me to apologize? "He's overwhelmed, Morgan." My father, David, stepped up beside her. His voice wasn't soothing anymore. It was sharp, impatient. "Don't be theatrical. Just transfer the money to Cameron's account. If you give him the $7,000, we can forget you tried to abandon us. We can be a family again." The air left my lungs. There it was, the naked, ugly truth. They didn't want a reconciliation. They wanted a transaction. This wasn't an intervention. This was a hostage situation. They were holding me in my childhood home until I paid the Cameron tax. I looked at my mother's face. For years, I thought she was a victim of Cameron's tantrums, just like me. I thought she walked on eggshells to keep the peace, but as she stood there blocking my escape, demanding my life savings to fund her golden child's vanity equipment, the illusion shattered. They weren't peacekeepers, they were human shields. They knew Cameron was a monster. They had created him, fed him, and enabled him, but they were too weak to deal with his rage. So they made a calculation. It was easier to sacrifice me, the quiet one, the good one, than to stand up to the tyrant. They would rather watch me bleed financial death than listen to Cameron scream for 5 minutes. They weren't protecting the family, they were protecting their own comfort at the expense of my survival. "You're not asking for help," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "You're extorting me." "We're parenting you," my mother shouted, her face reddening. "Now give us the phone and make the transfer, or you aren't leaving this house." I looked at the chain lock. I looked at my mother's clenched fists. I realized I couldn't push past her. She was stronger than me, and she was desperate. But she forgot one thing. I grew up in this house too. I knew where the skeletons were buried, and I knew exactly where she kept her secrets. "Okay," I lied, stepping back and dropping my bag. "You win. I need to use the bathroom first, then I'll pay him." They relaxed, just a fraction. The smug satisfaction on my father's face made me want to scream, but I swallowed it. I turned and walked away from the door, but I didn't head for the bathroom. I sprinted toward the back of the house, straight for the one room my mother thought was her sanctuary. I pivoted on my heel and bolted down the hallway. My mother lunged, her fingers grazing the strap of my bag, but she was too slow. I reached the heavy pine door of her home office, threw myself inside and slammed it shut. I twisted the deadbolt and engaged the secondary floor latch just as her shoulder hit the wood from the other side. The door shuddered, but it held. This room was her sanctuary, built to keep the world out. Now it was keeping her out. "Open this door," Linda screamed, pounding on the wood with a rhythmic, terrifying violence. "You are making this worse. You are destroying this family." I didn't answer. I didn't waste breath on screaming back. I dropped my bag and slid into the leather chair behind her massive oak desk. My hands were steady now. The fear had evaporated, replaced with a cold, humming clarity. I wasn't the daughter anymore. I was the auditor. I woke the computer monitor. It glowed to life, demanding a password. I typed it in without hesitation. My father's birthday, followed by her favorite vacation zip code. She had never changed it since I set the system up for her 6 years ago. Access granted. While they screamed and kicked at the door, vibrating the floorboards beneath my feet, I navigated straight to the family cloud server. I wasn't just looking for a way out. I was looking for the ammunition I knew was buried here. My mother was a hoarder of digital documents. She kept records of everything, convinced she was the master of her domain. First, the security system. I pulled up the timeline from 25 minutes ago. There it was, the high-def footage of the kitchen, Cameron ripping the passport, the smirk, the disposal, then the footage of the entryway, my mother blocking the door, my father demanding the transfer. It was all there. Extortion, false imprisonment, destruction of property. I downloaded the clips to my phone and emailed a backup copy to a secure server, but I wasn't done. I knew there was something else. For months, I had noticed odd letters arriving from banks I didn't recognize, letters my father would snatch from the mailbox and hide in his briefcase. I opened the folder labeled Finances and clicked through the subfolders until I found one simply named C. I opened the first PDF. It was a credit card statement. The balance was $16,000. The cardholder's name was Vanessa, Cameron's wife, but the billing address wasn't their house. It was a P.O. box in my mother's name. I opened the next one, another card, $13,000. Another, $19,000. The total debt was nearly $48,000. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes. This wasn't just Cameron being bad with money. This was identity theft. He had opened secret credit cards in his wife's name to fund his lifestyle. And my parents weren't just ignoring it, they were facilitating it. They were receiving the statements, hiding the mail, and helping him make the minimum payments from their savings accounts to keep Vanessa from finding out. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't just shielding him from consequences. They were active accomplices in financial fraud. They were willing to let Vanessa's credit score implode, willing to let her drown in debt she didn't create just to keep their golden child happy. It was the ultimate expression of the enabler's guilt. They had become criminals to avoid the discomfort of holding him accountable. Outside, the pounding stopped. "Morgan," my father's voice came through the wood, tremulous and weeping. "Please, we just want to help you. Don't do anything you can't take back." "I'm not doing anything," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm just forwarding the mail." I compiled the credit card statements into a single PDF dossier. I attached the security footage of the passport destruction. I opened a new email, typed Vanessa's work address in the recipient line, and added the subject, "The debt you don't know about." I hovered over the send button. This was the nuclear option. This would end Cameron's marriage. It would expose my parents. It would burn the family tree down to the roots. I thought about my $7,000 shredded in the disposal. I thought about the chain lock on the front door. I clicked send. "911, what is your emergency? My name is Morgan. I am being held against my will at 1634 Oakwood Drive. My mother has barricaded the doors and is refusing to let me leave. I am in immediate danger." I didn't wait for the operator's questions. I saw the red and blue lights wash over the walls of the study, painting the room in a strobe of emergency. They were fast. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. I thought the nightmare was ending. I thought the cavalry had arrived to break the siege. I unlocked the deadbolt. The moment the latch clicked, the door didn't just open, it was flung wide. But it wasn't the police standing there. It was Cameron. And he didn't look like the tyrant who had been pounding on the wood seconds ago. He looked like a victim of a massacre. Blood streamed down his right temple. Deep, jagged scratches marred his forehead. Fresh, angry lines that I knew with sickening certainty had been carved by his own fingernails in the hallway while I was on the phone. His shirt was ripped at the collar, exposing his neck. His hair was a chaotic mess. "Help!" he screamed, the sound raw and terrifying. He threw himself backward into the hallway just as the front door burst open and two uniformed officers stormed in. "Help me! She went crazy! She tried to kill me!" He collapsed at the feet of the lead officer, sobbing hysterically, his body shaking with what looked like trauma but was actually adrenaline. He pointed a trembling finger at me, standing frozen in the doorway of the office. "My sister, she attacked me. She stole my wedding band, and when I tried to get it back, look what she did." I stood there, my hands empty, my bag on the floor. I hadn't touched him. I hadn't been within 10 feet of him since I ran for the office. The officer looked at me. She didn't see a hostage who had locked herself away for safety. She saw a cold, unmoving woman standing over a bleeding, weeping father. "Ma'am, let me see your hands," the officer ordered, her hand resting on her holster. "I didn't touch him," I said, my voice calm but tight with shock. "He did that to himself. He's lying." "She's not lying," my father's wail pierced the air. David rushed forward from the den, dropping to his knees to wrap his arms around Cameron, cradling the monster he had created. He looked up at the officer with tears in his eyes, tears for the wrong child. "Morgan just snapped, officer. She's been unstable for weeks. She was demanding money from us, and when we said no, she lost it. We tried to keep her in the office to calm her down until you got here." I looked at my mother. Linda stood by the door, her face a mask of sorrowful regret. She nodded slowly. "It's true, we were trying to protect her from herself. We didn't want to call you, but she got violent." It was a masterclass in betrayal. They weren't just lying, they were rewriting reality in real time. They were willing to send me to jail, to give me a criminal record, to destroy my entire future, just to keep Cameron happy. It was the ultimate expression of the enabler's guilt. They had become criminals to avoid the discomfort of holding him accountable. I kept my voice steady as Cameron screamed and my father begged. "Officer, my phone is in my back pocket. Unlock it, the CloudWatch app, everything uploaded automatically." She hesitated, then pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and pressed play. In silence, we all watched. My mother threatening me, blocking the door. Cameron clawing his own face before pretending I attacked him. The officer removed my cuffs and turned on him instead. Cameron shrieked. The footage was doctored, but she arrested him for filing a false report and destroying federal property. That's when Vanessa rushed in, not to save him, but to confront my mother with proof he had stolen her identity and opened credit cards in her name. She told Linda she was pressing charges, taking Lily and Noah, and filing for divorce. My parents stared at me, furious and helpless. My mother snapped that I was homeless, but I just laughed. I handed her the deed paperwork she had put me on the house title years ago when her credit was wrecked. I now owned half and was forcing a court-ordered sale unless they paid me $55,000 in 30 days. They didn't have it. 7 months later, I was eating tapas in Barcelona when the deposit hit my phone. $68,230. Cameron had pled to probation. Vanessa got custody, and my parents lost their home and now lived crammed into an apartment with him. I took a selfie, sent it to the family chat with the caption, "Worth every second," and blocked them all. For the first time, I felt free. Family isn't sacrifice without return. Peace comes from walking away.